were cruelly cut short. Meanwhile, the broader community has been reminded of the dangers of road accidents, especially involving high-powered vehicles. The investigation highlights ongoing concerns about traffic safety on Victoria's roads. Fatalities have increased compared to previous years. Police have urged witnesses and individuals with dashcam footage to come forward, seeking to piece together the precise sequence of events leading to the collision. This tragic incident is a stark reminder of how quickly lives can be altered or lost due to dangerous driving and the devastating ripple effects on families and communities. The loss of Archdeep Kaur is mourned deeply, highlighting the urgent need for vigilance and responsibility on the roads to prevent such heartbreak in the future. In the quiet hours before dawn on May 3rd, 2025, a life full of promise came to an abrupt and tragic end on one of Kampala's busiest and most treacherous junctions. What should have been a day of celebration turned into a devastating loss that impacted Uganda's business and social communities, leaving many searching for answers amid questions of road safety and accountability. Rajiv Ruparelia, age 35, was no ordinary man. As the only son of Uganda's prominent business magnate Dr. Sudhir Ruparelia, Rajiv had carved out his own distinguished path as the managing director of the Ruparelia Group. This vast conglomerate spanned multiple sectors, including real estate, education, hospitality, finance, agriculture, and media. And under Rajiv's leadership, it became a vital force driving Uganda's economy. Educated at elite institutions, Dean Close School in Cheltenham and Regent's College, London, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Financial Management, Rajiv returned to Uganda with a clear vision to uplift his country. His tenure as managing director, beginning at age 27, was marked by bold expansion, job creation for thousands of Ugandans, and a commitment to inclusive development. He was also a passionate advocate for education, playing a pivotal role in growing Victoria University from a modest student population to over 8,700, making quality, affordable education accessible to many through innovative programs and scholarships. On the night of May 3rd, 2025, Rajiv was behind the wheel of one of his prized possessions, a high-performance Nissan GTR, registration number UAT638L. The GTR, a twin-turbocharged 3.8-liter V6, capable of producing 565 horsepower and accelerating from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 2.9 seconds, is a car known for its power and precision, but also for demanding utmost caution from its driver. Rajiv, who was preparing to serve as a groomsman at the wedding of his close friend Jonathan Bahizi Butira, was traveling from Kayansi towards Munyonyo along the Munyonyo-Entebbe Expressway when tragedy struck. Shortly after midnight, as he approached the Busabala flyover junction, an area undergoing significant construction with temporary concrete barriers in place, Rajiv's Nissan collided with these barriers. Police reports confirmed the vehicle hit the temporary pavements at the roundabout section, causing it to overturn multiple times. The car was reportedly launched nearly 8 meters into the air before crashing down and erupting into a fiery inferno. The crash was a single vehicle incident. Rajiv was the sole occupant and died instantly at the scene. Eyewitness accounts and CCTV footage corroborate the speed at which Rajiv was traveling, as well as the suddenness of the impact. Veteran journalist and family friend Andrew Mwenda suggested that Rajiv, having recently returned from London, may not have been aware of the temporary barriers, which had been reinstalled with inadequate or no warning signage. Residents of the Busabala area confirmed that the barriers had been a hazard long before the crash, citing multiple accidents and frequent complaints about the poor road safety measures. A senior government official, speaking anonymously, described the barriers as sheer negligence and criticized the responsible authorities for failing to provide adequate warnings or remove the dangers promptly. The death of Rajiv Ruparelia sparked national grief and outrage. His family released a statement expressing their profound loss and called for privacy during this difficult time. Rajiv was survived by a 3-year-old daughter. The Ruparelia Group and Victoria University publicly mourned their leader, highlighting his contributions and visionary leadership. Funeral rites were planned according to Hindu tradition, with cremation scheduled at the Lugogo crematorium and vigils held at the family residence in Kololo. Public health experts and local residents questioned the reasoning behind the placement of the barriers at such a hazardous location without proper lighting or signage, highlighting systemic failures in road safety management. Patrick Oyelu, a public health specialist, remarked that the barriers intended to protect had instead become instruments of death due to negligence. Law enforcement authorities confirmed that investigations into the crash remain ongoing. Rajiv's death not only underscored the risks posed by poor infrastructure management, but also left a void in Uganda's entrepreneurial and social landscape. As a businessman, community leader, and advocate for education, Rajiv's vision and efforts had a profound impact. His tragic passing in a blaze of fire and metal serves as a stark reminder of the urgent need for improved road safety and accountability in the country. In the early hours of June 2, 2019, a quiet Sunday morning in Las Vegas turned tragic when a high-speed crash shattered the stillness, claiming the life of a man who was resting in his parked vehicle. What began as an ordinary night escalated into a devastating event that would leave a community in mourning and raise urgent questions about the consequences of reckless decisions behind the wheel. Joshua David Bedell, 39, hailed from Greenville, Ohio, and was well known to those who cherished him as a man of warmth and community spirit. A graduate of Greenville Senior High School's class of 1998, Joshua was an active member of St. Mary's Catholic Church and the local Eagles Lodge. Joshua was described by friends and family as having an infectious laugh and a loving nature that endeared him to many. His life was anchored in close family ties, including his nieces and nephews. On June 2, 2019, Joshua was simply sitting in the passenger seat of his 2000 Toyota Camry, parked in a southeast Las Vegas shopping center lot, resting when fate would take a cruel turn. Shortly after 4 a.m., Joshua's quiet night was violently interrupted. A lime green 2018 McLaren 570S, rented roughly 18 hours earlier by 29-year-old Stanley E. Butler Jr. from Washington, D.C., was speeding southbound on South Pecos Road near Tropicana Avenue. Police reports stated the McLaren was traveling at a high rate of speed when Butler failed to maintain his lane and lost control. The undercarriage of the vehicle struck the pavement, triggering a catastrophic sequence. The car spun out of control, flew over a curb, and entered the parking lot where Joshua's Camry was parked. The impact was severe. The McLaren slammed into the stationary Camry, causing it to slide over a cement curb and flip as it collided with a wall. Police estimated the Camry's trajectory at roughly 70 feet following the crash. The McLaren itself traveled approximately 550 feet from the moment it lost control until it came to rest, overturning and emitting smoke. Joshua, who was asleep or resting in the front passenger seat, suffered blunt force injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. Stanley Butler and his passenger, Lavone Blackburn Brandt of Temple Hill, Maryland, were both hospitalized. Butler showed signs of intoxication, including bloodshot and watery eyes, and smelled of alcohol when police arrived. Although he refused a blood draw initially, officers obtained samples through a warrant. Butler was subsequently charged with 2 counts each of DUI and reckless driving resulting in death or substantial bodily harm. The McLaren rental was valued at approximately $250,000 and had been rented from Dream Exotics, a Las Vegas-based exotic car rental company. According to Vic Tiagi, the company's general manager, all renters must be at least 21, possess valid licenses, and pass insurance checks. Tiagi expressed condolences to Joshua's family and stressed the company's commitment to safe driving, though he acknowledged the inability to monitor renters' behavior post-rental. Dream Exotics had maintained a record of 0 injuries over its 4 years of operation prior to this tragedy. The crash marked the 50th fatality that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department investigated in 2019, highlighting a disturbing pattern of impaired and reckless driving in the region. Captain Nick Parisi, head of the LVMPD Traffic Bureau, publicly decried impaired driving as a preventable cause of death, emphasizing the irrevocable consequences such choices can have on innocent lives like Joshua's. Community members and friends expressed deep sorrow, sharing memories of Joshua as a beloved figure whose sudden death left a void in many hearts. Tributes flooded social media, remembering him as an amazing soul and a big guy whose laughter brightened the lives around him. His funeral services were held at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Greenville, with family and friends gathering to honor his memory. Joshua David Bedell's death stands as a somber reminder of how one person's reckless decision behind the wheel can extinguish a life full of potential and love.
Great, Joshua David Bedell, and silent. He was pronounced dead on the scene. He suffered catastrophic, he suffered blunt force trauma, and he was pronounced dead at the scene.
When we think about the dangers of cars, we picture screeching tires, shattered glass, and violent collisions. But sometimes, the most disturbing deaths don't come from high-speed crashes. They come from unexpected, almost unthinkable scenarios. These are 5 of the most unusual car-related deaths ever recorded. 16-year-old Kyle Plush was a promising teenager with a sharp mind, a warm personality, and a sense of humor. A student at Cincinnati's Seven Hills School, he was the kind of teenager who stood out, competing in academic competitions, playing tennis, and lighting up a room with his wit. But on April 10, 2018, the promising life of this unforgettable young man ended in a horrifying and preventable tragedy that would send shockwaves through the city and expose deep flaws within its emergency response system. That day, at around 3 p.m., Kyle had gone to retrieve his tennis gear from the family's 2004 Honda Odyssey, parked in the school lot. While reaching into the rear cargo area, the third-row bench seat unexpectedly flipped down, pinning his chest against the floor. Unable to free himself or breathe properly, Kyle found himself trapped in a position that quickly became life-threatening. Though physically immobilized, he remained conscious and used Siri's voice activation to call 911. His first call came in at 3:14 p.m. He pleaded for help, repeating that he was stuck in his van and needed assistance. The dispatcher on the line had trouble hearing him due to his distance from the phone. Kyle said he couldn't hear her either. She repeatedly asked for his location, but the call remained plagued by miscommunication. Despite the urgency in Kyle's voice, the lack of clarity meant critical information wasn't passed along to the officers dispatched. At 3:26 p.m., a police deputy arrived and patrolled the school's parking lots, but failed to exit his vehicle. He later told dispatchers he had looked in a van and didn't see anyone inside. Around that same time, Kyle made a second, more desperate 911 call. Struggling to breathe, he clearly stated he was inside a gold Honda Odyssey, likely without much time left, and asked the dispatcher to tell his mother he loved her in case he didn't survive. Tragically, the operator who received this second call never relayed the make, model, or color of the vehicle to responding officers. The call lasted 2.5 minutes, and again, Kyle's pleas were not met with effective action. Officers left the scene at 3:37 p.m., unaware that Kyle was only steps away, dying inside the van. By the evening, when Kyle failed to return home or appear at his tennis match, his parents grew concerned. His mother, Jill, called 911 to report him missing. Using the Find My iPhone app, they tracked his device to the school parking lot. At around 9 p.m., Kyle's father, Ron Plush, arrived and discovered his son unresponsive, still trapped beneath the collapsed seat. Emergency responders attempted resuscitation, but it was too late. The coroner later ruled his cause of death as asphyxia due to chest compression. In the wake of Kyle's death, public outrage erupted. An internal review by the police department initially cleared the dispatchers and officers of serious wrongdoing, aside from a body camera violation. But many, including Mayor John Cranley and members of the city council, criticized the investigation as incomplete. Independent firms were brought in to examine both the police and the 911 center responses. Councilwoman Amy Murray stated that Kyle did everything a child should be taught to do in an emergency and was failed catastrophically. The Plush family echoed that sentiment. Jill and Ron described their son as larger than life, funny, kind, intelligent, and full of promise. They spoke publicly in the months that followed, determined to push for change. Eventually, the city of Cincinnati agreed to a $6 million settlement with the Plush family, one of the largest in its history. As part of the agreement, the city committed to major reforms of its emergency response system, beginning with the hiring of outside experts and the implementation of Smart 911, a service that allows individuals to preload essential personal information for emergency situations. Kyle's death was a personal tragedy, but also a systemic failure. His story continues to drive reforms, with his family advocating so that no other child is ever left unheard in a moment of need. On the morning of February 3rd, 2021, in Little Ferry, New Jersey, a seemingly normal winter scene became the setting of an unthinkable tragedy. A 62-year-old man navigating icy conditions after a major winter storm found himself stuck in a snow-covered lot near Lowe's and Slate Creek Park. It should have been a simple rescue operation. Instead, the man's life came to a devastating and deeply unsettling end, leaving investigators, emergency responders, and loved ones searching for answers. That morning, a public works employee noticed a Mazda CX-5 lodged in the snow near a soccer field off Maroff Road. The SUV appeared to have mounted a parking divider and had become immobilized. The employee alerted police, prompting 2 Little Ferry officers to respond just after 9 a.m. Upon arrival, they found the vehicle's engine being aggressively revved as the driver attempted to free it, shifting forward and backward repeatedly in an effort to dislodge the SUV from the snowbank. The man inside the vehicle seemed unaware or unresponsive to the officer's presence. Both officers, including one trained as a firefighter, began banging on the windows and yelling for him to stop accelerating, as they had already called for a tow truck. Despite their loud and urgent efforts, the driver continued to press the gas pedal, and the vehicle rocked back and forth, tires spinning in place. Moments later, as the officers began to retreat to their patrol car, a loud pop was heard from beneath the SUV. Flames were suddenly visible beneath the engine compartment. The fire spread rapidly. Officers rushed back toward the Mazda, desperately trying to get in. They found the doors locked and attempted to shatter the glass. One officer managed to break a rear passenger window, but the fire had already overtaken the interior. Thick smoke and extreme heat forced them back. Within seconds, the entire SUV was engulfed. Firefighters arrived quickly and extinguished the flames, but it was too late. The man inside had been burned beyond recognition. The violent nature of the blaze and the speed at which it consumed the vehicle shocked first responders. Identification was ultimately confirmed using dental records. Authorities, including the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, launched an investigation, calling the incident strange due to the fire's rapid ignition and intensity. The cause of the fire remains unclear. No official explanation has been released, though officers at the scene reported that the man did not respond to repeated warnings to stop revving the engine. Why he failed to react remains unknown. The incident took place in the aftermath of a powerful winter storm that had left much of the Northeast blanketed in snow and ice, straining infrastructure and limiting mobility. Police officials later described the fire as unusually fast and aggressive. Chief James Walters remarked on the disturbing nature of the scene, stating that he could not understand how the flames had spread so quickly. The man's family was notified. One longtime friend, who had reportedly known him since childhood, shared his sorrow and disbelief. He visited the site after the fire, finding the victim's cell phone nearby and taking a piece of the charred vehicle as a personal memento. He spoke of his grief and the daily void left by the loss, a reminder of how quickly the ordinary can become irreversible. Though many questions remain unanswered, what is certain is that the tragic death of this man has raised serious concerns about vehicle safety under extreme conditions, emergency response limitations, and the unpredictable dangers that can unfold in a moment. On a quiet September evening in the Bronx, 59-year-old Paulina Narekai stepped outside her apartment building at 2040 Bronxdale Avenue, planning to pick up a pizza for her family. It was a routine errand, one she had likely done countless times before, but on Friday, September 9, 2022, just 4 steps from her front door, Paulina's life ended in a sudden, horrifying accident that would devastate a close-knit community and leave lingering questions in its wake. Paulina was a well-known and beloved figure in the neighborhood. A stay-at-home mother of 3 and grandmother of 1, she had spent her life devoted to her family. Originally from Albania, she had made a life in the Bronx with her husband of 40 years, Fran Narekai. Those who knew her described her as kind, generous, and nurturing. She was known for looking after neighbors in need, offering friendship and care to those around her, and was deeply rooted in the local community. The driver involved in the incident was a 45-year-old man operating a gray 2016 Lexus SUV. According to reports, the vehicle was traveling along Bronxdale Avenue when it swerved to avoid a van stopped at the intersection of Kruger Avenue. In that sudden maneuver, the driver lost control. The SUV mounted the curb and violently struck Paulina, who was walking on the sidewalk. The force of the impact propelled her into a metal fence, where a spike impaled her body. The vehicle continued forward, crashing into the building behind her. Multiple eyewitnesses described the scene as chaotic and traumatic. A local Uber driver, Sala Roby, immediately rushed to Paulina's side and attempted to comfort her. A nurse who happened to be passing by also stepped in, recognizing the severity of her injuries and advising against moving her due to suspected internal bleeding. Emergency responders arrived quickly and transported Paulina to Jacobi Hospital. Despite undergoing emergency surgery, she succumbed to her injuries later that evening. Frayne, who had been in their apartment at the time, heard the sound of the crash and rushed downstairs, only to find his wife unresponsive. He later told reporters that he knew immediately she wasn't going to survive, citing the significant amount of blood and the extent of her injuries. Paulina's daughter, Diana Narekai, expressed disbelief and grief, especially given how close her mother had been to safety when the tragedy occurred. Her family was left heartbroken. struggling to comprehend the sudden loss of a woman they called sweet, selfless, and irreplaceable. In the hours and days following the incident, neighbors gathered outside the building to honor Paulina's memory. Flowers, candles, and balloons formed a growing memorial, a testament to the affection and respect she had earned over the years. People who had known her since childhood described her as a pillar of the community, always smiling, always present, always willing to help. The driver of the Lexus remained at the scene and was transported to the hospital in stable condition. Police said the crash appeared to be accidental, though the investigation remains ongoing. No charges have been filed as of now. According to public records, the SUV had accumulated 168 violations, including multiple offenses for speeding in school zones, a detail that raised concerns among residents. Some locals pointed to a newly installed bike lane near the intersection as a possible contributing factor, claiming the configuration created confusion for drivers and may have played a role in the crash. Others cited poor visibility and difficult road angles as potential hazards. One witness reported that the driver had mentioned his brakes failing, though this has not been officially confirmed. Paulina Rekaj's death was a devastating loss, sudden, violent, and deeply unjust. On the stormy evening of February 14, 2014, Julie Silito, a 49-year-old minicab driver from Finsbury, North London, was at work as she had been countless nights before, a devoted mother of 3 and a soon-to-be grandmother for the second time. She had ventured out that night despite high winds lashing the city. Despite the weather, Julie had insisted on working to buy a birthday gift for her husband. It was a selfless gesture, one that would end in tragedy. Julie was widely known as a loving and cheerful woman, deeply devoted to her family. She was married to Steve Silito, a security consultant, and together they had raised 3 sons. The couple was anticipating the arrival of a new granddaughter, news that had filled her with joy. Friends and family regarded her as warm, fun-loving, and exceptionally family-oriented. Her dedication to her loved ones was matched by a strong work ethic, and on that fateful Valentine's Day, she went out to earn just a little more to make someone else happy. At approximately 11:05 p.m., while parked near Holborn Underground Station in central London, Julie's silver Skoda Octavia was struck by an immense and unexpected force. As her cab idled on the roadside, powerful winds tore loose a massive section of concrete masonry from the parapet of a 120-year-old Victorian building, weighing nearly 2 tons. The 6-foot section of stone fell abruptly from the facade and collapsed directly onto the vehicle. The entire front of the cab was crushed and the roof caved in, leaving Julie pinned in the driver's seat. She was killed instantly from catastrophic head injuries. Inside the car with her were 2 passengers, 25-year-old Luke Fitton and his 24-year-old girlfriend Bo Hootenbos. The couple had hailed the cab after a Valentine's Day dinner at Gordon Ramsay's Bread Street kitchen. The force of the falling rubble left them partially buried. Luke was crushed under the weight of the debris, suffering severe chest injuries and remaining trapped until emergency crews arrived. Bo was briefly unconscious but managed to regain awareness. Despite feeling metal pressing against her face and intense pain in her leg, she was able to crawl from the wreckage. Emergency responders from the London Fire Brigade, ambulance service, and police arrived within minutes. About 20 firefighters worked to rescue Luke and Bo, while paramedics attempted to resuscitate Julie at the scene. Despite their efforts, she was pronounced dead. The couple was taken to separate hospitals, Luke with serious injuries, Bo with minor trauma. A passerby also sustained leg injuries during the chaos. The next morning, cordons were set up around the building and nearby structures were evacuated as a safety precaution. The public was left stunned, and images of the crumpled cab surrounded by rubble spread rapidly through news outlets. The entire community, especially those who knew Julie personally, was shaken by the freak and fatal nature of the incident. In the weeks that followed, an inquest into Julie's death revealed troubling details. The building's owner, Taskin Izzet of Greenberg Development Limited, had not conducted a full structural survey or risk assessment on the property after purchasing it in 2007. While not required by law, the lack of formal inspections raised concerns. Expert testimony confirmed that the building's age and design allowed for potential structural issues, and that the extreme winds likely triggered the collapse. However, there was no evidence of ongoing neglect or visible signs of disrepair. The jury ultimately ruled Julie's death accidental. Julie's husband, Steve, addressed the court, emphasizing the need for legislation requiring structural inspections for older buildings. He described Julie as his everything, and urged others to learn from the tragedy. Through tears, he asked one of the surviving passengers whether Julie's death had been quick. The answer, confirmation that she likely died instantly, provided a measure of solace. Julie Silito's death was a harrowing reminder of how quickly life can be taken by forces beyond human control. Her family, friends, and passengers live with the memory of that night, carrying both grief and gratitude for the life she lived and for those who narrowly escaped.
Land on the roof, crushing it.
On the afternoon of September 28, 2023, a tragic accident unfolded in the north parking lot of West Edmonton Mall, resulting in the sudden and devastating death of an 18-year-old male. The teen, whose identity has not been released to the public, was one of 3 individuals inside a Toyota Camry when the incident occurred. At a location known for its bustling activity, family attractions, and heavy daily foot traffic, an ordinary day turned fatal in a matter of seconds. The young man had been a front seat passenger in the vehicle, which was being driven by a 17-year-old male. A 15-year-old girl was seated in the back. According to Edmonton police, the car was slowly navigating through the indoor parking structure when the victim stood up through the vehicle's open sunroof. The car was in motion, and as it passed beneath a ramp inside the multi-level parkade, the teen struck his head on a fixed concrete beam overhead. The collision was sudden and forceful. The beam, part of the structure supporting the level above, was immovable, and the impact likely caused immediate and catastrophic head trauma. Emergency services were dispatched following a welfare call at approximately 1:45 p.m. Officers and EMS teams arrived quickly to find the young man gravely injured. He received treatment at the scene and was transported to the hospital, but his injuries were unsurvivable. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Neither the driver nor the backseat passenger reported any physical injuries, and both remained at the scene. The Edmonton Police Service has confirmed that speed and impairment were not believed to be contributing factors in the incident. However, due to the unusual nature of the accident, the case has been taken over by the Major Collision Investigation Section. Authorities appealed for any witnesses or individuals with dashcam footage that might help clarify the circumstances further. The accident occurred inside one of Canada's busiest commercial spaces. West Edmonton Mall, the second largest shopping center in North America, attracts roughly 32 million visitors each year. Known for its wide array of attractions, including an indoor water park, amusement rides, and hundreds of retail outlets, the mall is often bustling with visitors throughout the day. The North Parking Facility, in particular, is a large multi-level garage that connects directly to some of the mall's busiest entrances. Images taken shortly after the accident show emergency vehicles surrounding the scene, and parts of the parking facility were cordoned off to allow investigators to work. The concrete beam involved in the incident is a fixed overhead structure, standard in many older indoor parking facilities. At the time of the collision, weather and visibility conditions were not reported to be problematic, and there is no indication of vehicle malfunction. The community has responded with an outpouring of shock and grief, and many are left grappling with the heartbreaking reality that a moment of carelessness in a familiar setting led to irreversible consequences. Authorities urge the public to come forward with any additional information. One family was left to cope with the unimaginable loss of a young life, cut short in a moment that no one could have anticipated.
The guy stuck his head through the sunroof and then whacked his, when he stuck his head out the sunroof and then he struck his head on a concrete beam above. Oh shit. So they were in a parking garage. Oh my god, and he struck his head on a concrete beam. Sue, what have you done? Alexander, Sandy, Maud Hanson. The falling objects.
Death can come in the strangest ways, and sometimes all it takes is an object. Death can come in the strangest ways, and sometimes all it takes is an object falling from above. Death can come in the strangest ways, and sometimes all it takes is an object falling from above. In this video, we'll explore 5 of the most ridiculous deaths caused by falling objects. Freak accidents that prove you never know what might hit you next. It was October 24th, 1988, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. What began as a seemingly small incident, a pet dog's fall from a 13th floor balcony, quickly turned into a tragic sequence of events that left the city in shock. Kachi, a poodle belonging to the Montoya family, was playing in their high-rise apartment that day. One of the children threw a tennis ball, which bounced onto the balcony. Excited, Kachi ran after it, but as he reached the railing, something went wrong. The recently repaired barrier gave way, and the dog plunged 13 stories down. At that exact moment, 75-year-old Marta Espina was walking below. She had no time to react as Kachi struck her on the head. The impact was fatal for both the dog and Marta. A quiet afternoon had turned into a horrifying scene in an instant. What should have been an isolated accident quickly escalated. A crowd gathered around Marta and Kachi's lifeless bodies. Among them was 46-year-old Edith Sola, who had been walking nearby. Drawn by the commotion, she stepped closer to see what had happened. As she stood near the scene, a bus was approaching on Rivadavia Avenue. In the chaos, Edith accidentally stepped too far into the street. The driver, unable to stop in time, swerved, but couldn't avoid hitting her. She was thrown to the pavement with devastating force. Horrified onlookers saw everything unfold within seconds. The tragedy didn't stop there. One of the witnesses, a man whose identity was never revealed, had watched the entire sequence, from Kachi's fall to Marta's passing, and then Edith's accident. The overwhelming sight proved too much for him. As he stood there, visibly shaken, he suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. Bystanders rushed to his side, and paramedics arrived within minutes. But despite their efforts, the man didn't survive. He had suffered a heart attack. In less than a few minutes, 4 lives were lost. 3 people and 1 dog, in an accident unlike anything the city had seen before. News of the bizarre tragedy spread quickly. Local newspapers ran headlines like 4 lives lost in 1 accident, the strange case of Kachi the poodle. The chain of events seemed too unreal to believe. Even years later, it was referenced in movies and social media, becoming a chilling example of how unpredictable life can be. The community struggled to make sense of what had happened. Witnesses remained shaken, haunted by what they had seen. The Montoya family, who had adored Kachi, was devastated. Though they never could have imagined such consequences, they couldn't shake the guilt of knowing their pet's accident had set everything in motion. As time passed, the story became a legend in Buenos Aires, forever tied to the Caballito neighborhood. A simple game with a tennis ball had led to an unimaginable loss of life. The events of that day remain one of the most unsettling accidents in the city's history. A chilling example of how one small moment can have consequences far beyond what anyone expects.
What the dooly happened there? Well, it all started out with a poodle. I know it was a French poodle, but it was in London, I think. And then it all started out with a poodle, a dog. He was playing a tennis ball. He was chasing after a tennis ball. And then the tennis ball ended up on the balcony, but when the dog went after the tennis ball, something wasn't right, because as it bumped the barrier, it was recently repaired, and it just gave way. Wait, what? Yeah. And the dog fell, and then there was a lady below walking, in her 70s, walking down below when the dog struck her on the head, killing both the dog and her in the process. Oh my God. But that was not the only life. There were 4 lives taken in total, because it set off other events. Yeah, because then there was another woman who stepped out, she saw, there was a woman who witnessed that other lady who get struck in the head by a dog. We witnessed them both die. She stepped too far out onto the street. And then the bus came, and the bus driver couldn't stop, he swerved, but he couldn't avoid hitting her. And that killed her in the process. Oh. And then the guy who witnessed it all, he witnessed it all happen. He didn't just suffer a heart attack and died. Oh my God. Yeah, he witnessed it from the dog falling on top of the woman, to the other one getting hit by the bus. Yeah, I guess he couldn't take it. He couldn't take it. It caused him to suffer a heart attack. He died as well. Oh my God.
In 1982, 27-year-old David Grunman and his roommate, James Joseph Suchochi, set out into the Arizona desert.
I remember that.
Near Lake Pleasant. Armed with a shotgun, they weren't on any serious mission, just looking for excitement. But their decision to use the towering cacti as target practice would lead to a tragic and bizarre accident. David, familiar with firearms, often used them for fun, rather than for any real purpose. purpose. That day he decided to take aim at the massive saguaro cacti that dotted the desert landscape. Shooting at cacti wasn't unheard of. Some did it out of boredom, others just for the thrill of destruction. But what David didn't realize was how dangerous these seemingly harmless plants could be. The saguaro cactus, native to the Sonoran Desert, is one of the largest and most iconic cacti in the world. These slow-growing plants can reach up to 40 feet tall and weigh several tons. They take decades to grow their first arm and can live over 150 years. Despite their importance to the ecosystem, they have often been vandalized, sometimes by people unaware of their sheer weight and structure. That day, David and James found a smaller saguaro, and David shot at it until it fell over. Encouraged by his success, he set his sights on a much larger cactus, standing about 26 feet tall, and likely over a century old. He fired multiple rounds into its thick trunk, aware of the consequences. With each shot, the cactus began to weaken. Then, without warning, a massive arm, roughly 4 feet long, snapped off, crashed down with immense force, striking David before he had time to react. The only words were, "Timber!" before the heavy limb landed on it. The sheer weight and sharp spines left him pinned to the ground with severe injuries. James, watching in shock, was unable to do anything, for deep in the desert, far from help, bit trapped under the enormous cactus limb, had no chance of escape. Adventure had turned into a tragedy. Death became one of Arizona's most unusual accidents, grim example of how nature can be unpredictable and even deadly. While it seemed like a harmless act of destruction, the sheer power of the desert landscape had responded in a way. James, watching in shock, was unable to do anything, for deep in the desert, far from help, bit trapped under the enormous cactus limb, had no chance of escape. Adventure had turned into a tragedy. Death became one of Arizona's most unusual accidents, grim example of how nature can be unpredictable and even deadly. While it seemed like a harmless act of destruction, the sheer power of the desert landscape had responded in a way no one expected. Beyond the shock of the incident, David's story drew attention to the importance of protecting Arizona's native plants, particularly the saguaro. These cacti are essential to the desert ecosystem, providing food and shelter for various animals. Because of their value, Arizona passed laws as early as 1929 to protect them, making it illegal to harm or remove it. David's death was both tragic and a stark example of how reckless behavior in nature can have dire consequences. Some see his story as a lesson in respecting the environment, while others recall it as an eerie twist of fate, nature striking back in an unexpected way. Over time, his story has become almost like an urban legend. Some see it as an unlucky accident, while others view it as an ironic end for someone who destroyed a living thing only to be harmed by it in return. Regardless of how people interpret it, this incident remains a striking reminder of how unpredictable nature can be. While deserts may seem empty, they are full of life, and sometimes nature has the final say.
Nature has the final say.
It was December 9th, 2024, a cold winter morning in Lunenburg County, Virginia. Lester C. Harvey Jr., a 58-year-old father of 5, was doing something he had loved since childhood, hunting. For Lester, hunting wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. Raised in rural Virginia, he had spent years honing his skills as an outdoorsman. Hunting trips were not just about tracking animals, but about bonding with family and friends. On this day, Lester joined a group of hunters tracking a black bear. It was a routine outing, one he had done many times before. The hunters successfully followed the bear to a tree, where it climbed in an attempt to escape. They observed it from a distance, planning their next move. Then as the group started to step back, one of the hunters fired a shot. What happened next was unexpected. The injured bear lost its grip and fell from the tree, landing directly on Lester, who was standing about 10 feet away. The animal, weighing several hundred pounds, struck him with full force. The other hunters rushed to Lester, trying to help. Realizing the severity of his injuries, they immediately called for medical assistance. Paramedics arrived quickly and transported him to a nearby hospital. However, his condition was critical. Despite being transferred to 2 different hospitals for treatment, Lester passed away 4 days later, on December 13th. The Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources investigated the incident and confirmed that Lester's injuries were caused by the bear's fall. Officials determined that it was a tragic accident and no charges were filed. Lester's family was devastated. His loved ones described him as a generous, hardworking man who was always there for others. His obituary reflected the deep loss felt by his community, calling him a friend to all, and someone who never met a stranger. His son Josh shared an emotional tribute, saying, "Dad was doing what he loved most, hunting with me and some of his best friends when this happened. I love you, Dad. We made so many great memories together, and I'm grateful for everything you taught me." His daughter Lindsay also expressed her grief, calling her father the hardest worker I know. She shared how hunting was one of the few things he would take time off work for. "I'm broken in ways I didn't even know I could be," she wrote. "Please keep us in your prayers." Lester's passing left an emptiness in the lives of his wife, April, his 3 sons, 2 daughters, and 8 grandchildren. He had been the heart of his family, not only as a loving father and grandfather, but also as a skilled contractor and a loyal friend. The local community also felt the loss deeply. Many knew Lester as a kind and approachable man. He was an active member of Mount Carmel United Methodist Church and was often seen helping at community events. His kindness and generosity had made an impact on many. James Russell Hudson, a close friend, posted a video tribute remembering Lester as one of the best. He spoke about how painful it was to lose someone so cherished, especially during the holiday season. "Keep Mr. Harvey's family in your prayers," he said. "It's never easy losing someone, especially this time of year." Though the incident was ruled an accident, many found it hard to believe how something so rare could happen. Hunting is an activity that requires careful planning and safety measures. Yet on this day, an unexpected turn of events led to tragedy. Despite the heartbreaking loss, Lester's family and friends focused on the life he lived rather than the way he passed. They remembered his warmth, his hard work, and the love he had for his family. His children and grandchildren will carry on the lessons he taught them, keeping his legacy alive. It was Thursday, July 20th, 2023, in New Taipei City, Taiwan. Wang, a 21-year-old student at National Chengchi University, was on her way to school that afternoon. She had just left a nearby building and stopped at a bus stop near exit 2 of the Xinpu MRT station, a busy area in the Banqiao district. Wang was casually dressed, carrying a backpack, and wearing a mask while she waited. At exactly 1:06 p.m., an unexpected tragedy struck. A 30-kilogram air conditioning unit fell from the 17th floor of a nearby building, hitting her on the head and severely injuring her legs. The impact was so strong that it left a large wound. A witness later recalled how another woman standing nearby had narrowly avoided being hit. Bystanders rushed to help, including a few nurses who happened to be in the area. They immediately tried to assist her while someone called for emergency services. An ambulance arrived quickly and transported her to Far Eastern Memorial Hospital. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Wang did not survive due to the severity of her injuries. News of her sudden passing shocked the community. Friends, classmates, and university officials were devastated. Wang had been a finance student with a bright future, and her school expressed deep sorrow, offering support to her grieving family. Eyewitnesses described horrifying details of what had happened. One person recalled seeing Wang lying motionless, with blood pooling around her while a broken air conditioning unit lay nearby. It was a heartbreaking sight that many found difficult to forget. Authorities immediately launched an investigation into the accident. Their focus turned to the worker responsible for installing the unit, 31-year-old Lee. He had been assigned to install the unit in a 17th-floor apartment, but had not secured it properly. Instead of ensuring a stable installation, he had fastened it to the window frame incorrectly. Lee admitted that he lacked experience with these types of installations. In fact, he had even called a colleague earlier for guidance. Unfortunately, the unit was not secured well enough, and at some point it came loose, crashing down to the street below. Tragically, Huang happened to be directly in its path. Lee was taken in for questioning and acknowledged his responsibility. Authorities charged him with negligent manslaughter, a serious offense in Taiwan that can lead to up to 5 years in prison or a fine of 500,000 new Taiwan dollars. Additionally, the company that employed him was fined 300,000 new Taiwan dollars for violating safety regulations under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that this was an avoidable accident. If proper safety measures had been followed, the unit would not have fallen. The incident sparked widespread discussions about construction safety, especially in high-rise buildings. Many called for stricter regulations to prevent similar accidents in the future. Wang's tragic passing also raised concerns about the qualifications and training of workers handling heavy equipment. Ensuring that installations like these are properly inspected and double-checked could mean the difference between life and death. The community and National Chengchi University urged for stronger enforcement of safety standards to prevent further tragedies. For Huang's family, the loss was unbearable. She had been an ambitious young woman with a promising future, and her life was taken away in an instant. The entire community mourned her, struggling to understand how such a preventable accident had cost her life. What made this tragedy even more unsettling was how it happened in a completely ordinary setting, a simple bus stop in the middle of the city. Something that should have been a routine moment turned into an unimaginable loss due to one mistake. As discussions about safety continued, authorities emphasized the importance of responsibility in every job, no matter how small the task may seem. This devastating accident was a wake-up call for construction workers, employers, and regulators to take workplace safety more seriously. Wang's story will not be forgotten. While her life was cut short, the impact of this tragedy pushed for important conversations about safety, accountability, and the measures needed to prevent similar incidents in the future. On May 2nd, 2014, a night of football in Recife, Brazil, turned into a horrifying event that shocked the nation. The match between Santa Cruz and Tirana at Arruda Stadium had ended in a 1-1 draw, and fans were making their way out of the stadium when tensions escalated. What started as typical post-game frustration quickly spiraled into violence. The stadium, packed with over 8,000 spectators, had been filled with excitement. But as fans left, a group of Santa Cruz supporters clashed with Tirana fans. Chaos erupted. and some individuals began tearing out toilet bowls from the stadium restrooms, hurling them from the upper stands. 3 were thrown in total, but 1 had devastating consequences. A toilet bowl struck 26-year-old Paulo Ricardo Gomez da Silva on the head, killing him instantly. The force of the impact, estimated to be over 750 pounds, left no chance of survival. As others fled in panic, Paulo lay lifeless on the ground. Paulo was a devoted Santa Cruz fan who had only come to enjoy the game. His sudden death left his family devastated. His mother, Jolma, later spoke to the media, overwhelmed with grief. "They took my son away from me," she said, expressing pain no parent should have to endure. The incident happened just 40 days before Brazil was set to host the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Recife was one of the host cities, though matches were scheduled at the newly built Arena Pernambuco. Despite this, Paulo's death cast a shadow over Brazil's preparations, raising serious concerns about fan safety. The country had long struggled with football-related violence, but this shocking act drew global attention. Authorities responded quickly. The Arruda Stadium was shut down while investigations took place, and the Brazilian Football Federation suspended all matches there indefinitely. Police worked to identify those responsible for throwing the toilet bowls, as disturbing images from that night spread across news outlets. Football violence in Brazil wasn't new, but this case was particularly shocking. Organized fan groups had been involved in past altercations, and security measures had often failed to prevent them. With the World Cup approaching, this tragedy intensified fears about safety during the tournament. For many, this event highlighted deep-rooted issues within Brazilian football culture. Rivalries often extended beyond the game, leading to clashes that put innocent spectators at risk. Officials now faced mounting pressure to take action. The death of a fan in such a brutal manner could not be ignored. As the World Cup drew closer, concerns remained. Could Brazil ensure the safety of players and fans? The new Arena Pernambuco symbolized modernization, but the events at Arruda Stadium reminded the world of the challenges still facing Brazilian football. Despite increased security during the tournament, Paulo's death was never forgotten. His mother, like many others who had lost loved ones to fan violence, was left to grieve. No amount of justice could bring her son back. In the weeks that followed, investigations continued. Reports suggested organized fan groups played a role in the violence, but the full details remained uncertain. Though the football world soon shifted focus to the upcoming World Cup, the tragedy at Arruda Stadium remained a painful memory. That night was supposed to be about football, a game meant to bring people together. Instead, it became one of Brazil's darkest sporting moments. A young man lost his life, and a family was left with heartbreak. The sport that had brought so much joy to Brazil was now linked to an unimaginable tragedy. As the World Cup unfolded, many still remembered the shocking events in Recife. Even with promises of improved security, the scars of that night lingered. For Paulo's family, the pain would never fade. His death was a tragic reminder that moments of joy can turn tragic in an instant.
And then the guy was killed when he was hit by a toilet bowl. That's a little weird way to die. I mean, the thing like being hit by a toilet bowl, like, what the fuck? How does that even make sense? Mama goes, so Alexander's in the bin. Alexander's in the bin. I said, no, they're hit by toilet bowls. What the fuck? What is this nonsense? Toilet bowls, really? Why would you start throwing toilet bowls out of bathrooms? That makes no sense. I mean, what the duty is this? She's nasty. Influenza toilet bowls. Give me the water. Just kidding. What are you doing? Give me the water. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. That a guy got killed because he was hit by a toilet bowl. Since when did I did not know that actually happened. I didn't, maybe we was joking about it. Yeah, I never even knew that even a toilet bowl. You'd be hit by it,
Some people claim to sense when something
there
bad.
has been fights in football stadiums before, but I've never heard of them.
Some people claim to sense when something bad is
putting out
happening.
toilet bowls.
But in these cases, they went far beyond the field. These are real stories of famous people who clearly predicted their own deaths through words, actions, or final warnings before it actually happened. In this video, we'll look at 5 disturbing cases that make you question if they somehow knew what was coming.
mean, the fact that they started ripping toilet bowls out of
It was
bathrooms.
October 8, 2011, in Chicago.
Oh my God.
Mikey Welch, a 40-year-old artist and former bassist for the band Weezer, had just checked into the Raffaello Hotel. He was in town for Riot Fest, where Weezer was set to perform. For Mikey, this trip wasn't just about music. It was a rare vacation. He wanted to reconnect with old friends, enjoy the show, and take a break from his regular life in Vermont, where he worked as a full-time painter. But Mikey never made it to the festival. When checkout time came and went, hotel staff became concerned. Around 1 p.m., they entered his room and found him unresponsive. He wasn't breathing. Authorities were called, but it was already too late. At the time, the official cause of death hadn't been confirmed. Investigators suspected substance use, but toxicology results would take weeks. What stood out, however, was something Mikey had posted on social media just days before. On September 26, 2011, 12 days before his death, he tweeted, "Dreamt I died in Chicago next weekend. Heart attack in my sleep. Need to write my will today." He later added, "Correction, the weekend after next." He died on the weekend he mentioned in the city he named, just as he had tweeted. That wasn't the only unsettling message. Earlier, he had listed one of his paintings for $250 on Facebook, writing, "If I am still alive at time of purchase, price to increase exponentially if I expire prematurely." These weren't just strange coincidences, they sounded like warnings. Mikey Welch was born on April 20th, 1971 in Syracuse, New York. He got his start in Boston's music scene, playing bass in local bands and eventually touring with acts like Juliana Hatfield and Verbena. In 1997, he joined a project led by Weezer frontman Rivers Cuomo. By 1998, Mikey became a full-time member of Weezer after Matt Sharp left. He played on the band's 2001 release, The Green Album, which included hits like Island in the Sun and Hashpipe. But behind the scenes, Mikey was dealing with serious mental health struggles. Years of substance use and untreated conditions, including bipolar disorder and PTSD, had taken their toll. During a European tour in 2001, his mental health worsened. He lost weight and became overwhelmed. After returning to the U.S., he planned to see a psychiatrist. But before that, he had to finish a few shows, including one on The Tonight Show. That ended up being his final performance with the band. Not long after, Mikey experienced a serious mental health crisis. He was hospitalized, placed in a coma, and later admitted to a psychiatric facility. That incident ended his time in Weezer. By August 2001, he was replaced by Scott Schreiner. Mikey briefly returned to music in 2002 with the Kickovers, but soon left the industry. He spoke openly about how uncomfortable he felt being monitored in recording studios. Instead, he focused on painting. Living in Vermont with his wife and 2 sons, he created large, abstract works using his hands. He also built sculptures from discarded objects and collaborated with snowboard brands. Despite leaving the music world, Mikey stayed in touch with former bandmates. He made appearances at their shows, and in 2010 even joined them on stage in Vermont. In July 2011, he brought a painting to a Weezer concert in New York and ended up playing guitar during one song, quietly and briefly, but enough to be noticed by longtime fans. Just a week before traveling to Chicago, Mikey posted online about his excitement. He had just visited Nashville and was looking forward to seeing Weezer perform. But then came the tweet, the one that now feels hard to ignore. Weezer responded to the news the same day. On social media, they described him as fearless and deeply creative. The next night, they played their Riot Fest set as planned and included a tribute to Mikey during the show. Mikey Welch's life was complicated, filled with creativity, struggles, and moments of joy. But it ended in a way that felt almost too precise. He had said goodbye long before anyone knew it. It was June 23, 2021, in Barcelona, Spain. John McAfee, the 75-year-old tech pioneer known for creating the first commercial antivirus software, was found dead in his prison cell at Bryant's 2, a high-security facility. Authorities stated it appeared to be self-inflicted, but the timing and his past statements led many to question what really happened. McAfee was no stranger to controversy. His life was filled with legal issues, unpredictable behavior, and claims that powerful people were after him. Just hours before he died, a Spanish court approved his extradition to the United States, where he faced multiple charges. 10 counts related to taxes in Tennessee, and 7 more involving alleged financial misconduct in New York. If convicted, he was looking at a sentence that could have kept him in prison for the rest of his life. He had been held in Spain since October 2020, when he was arrested at Barcelona's airport while trying to fly to Istanbul. Even before that, McAfee had warned that something like this might happen. In November 2019, he tweeted that U.S. officials were out to get him, and if he was ever found dead, it wasn't by his own choice. He even got a tattoo on his right arm that said, "Whacked" as a message. In October 2020, after being jailed in Spain, he tweeted again. He said he was doing fine, enjoying the food and company, but he made it clear, if he were to die in a way that looked self-inflicted, it wouldn't be by his own hand. He even referenced the death of Jeffrey Epstein, which had already caused widespread suspicion. McAfee's lawyer said he showed no signs of distress. Just days before, he seemed optimistic. Then minutes after his death was reported, something strange happened. A post appeared on his official Instagram account. A black image with a white letter Q. It was a reference to the QAnon conspiracy group, known for believing in secret plots by powerful people. The post was quickly deleted, and shortly after, the entire Instagram account vanished. No one has ever confirmed who had access to it. His wife Janice believed he was targeted. On Father's Day, just days before his death, she posted online that the U.S. government wanted him to die in prison. She said he was outspoken, refused to be silenced, and was being punished for it. She added that prison had affected his health, but insisted he would never end his own life. Before his death, McAfee faced intense scrutiny. He was wanted for questioning in Belize after a neighbor's death, denied claims from a critical documentary, and was arrested in the Dominican Republic for carrying weapons. Known for eccentric behavior, he claimed to have 47 children and a $100 million fortune. He was also linked, without proof, to a YouTube channel showing drone footage of Epstein's Island. While in Spanish custody, McAfee wrote to Janice that life in prison there was far better than in the U.S., saying he was treated like a human being. But even Spain's prisons weren't safe. In the weeks before McAfee's death, several inmates died in similar ways, including 2 at Ryan's 2. One inmate had even been fatally attacked by another prisoner. Attempts were made to revive McAfee, but he was pronounced dead soon after. The official cause was listed as a self-inflicted incident, though toxicology tests were ordered. Despite no confirmed signs of foul play, many remained suspicious. His cryptic tweets, the tattoo, the letter Q, and repeated claims that he would never end his own life led people to wonder if there was more to the story. Online, his 2019 whacked post was shared tens of thousands of times. Some even repeated the phrase, McAfee didn't kill himself. No solid proof has come out to confirm those suspicions. But for many, the mystery around John McAfee didn't end with his death. It only grew deeper. It was November 15, 2017, in Tucson, Arizona. Gustav Elijah R., known to fans as Lil Peep, was 21 years old and in the middle of a 33-city tour across the United States. That night, he was supposed to perform at a local venue, but he never got on stage. Hours before the show, he was found unresponsive on his tour bus. He was later confirmed dead. Lil Peep wasn't just a rising artist. He had become a voice for young people dealing with emotional struggles. His music blended emo, punk, and trap, and he spoke honestly about things like loneliness, heartbreak, and identity. His fans felt seen through his lyrics. But the same things he sang about were also things he lived with every day. Born on November 1st, 1996 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Peep was raised on Long Island and came from both American and Swedish roots. He started uploading songs to SoundCloud in 2013 under the name Trap Goose, before changing it to Lil Peep, a nickname his mother gave him. He gained early attention with tracks like Star Shopping and The Way I See Things. One line from the latter stood out to fans. I got a feeling that I'm not going to be here for next year, so let's laugh a little before I'm gone. It was one of his first songs, but after his death, the words took on a different meaning. Peep's music mixed raw vocals with lo-fi beats and deeply personal lyrics. His mixtapes, Lil Peep, Part 1, Live Forever, Crybaby, and Hellboy, touched on emotional pain and his use of substances. He also worked with groups like Goth Boy Click and Skippa Posse. Peep was open about his life, and that made fans feel close to him, but it also made it hard to tell where the artist ended and the real person began. In Lil Kennedy, he rapped about his bleak outlook, saying he was destined to die and had never found meaning. In Falling For Me, he said, I don't want to die, I don't want to OD. In 2017, he told Pitchfork that music was like wrestling. Artists had to become characters. But while some parts were exaggerated, he said much of what he rapped about was real. He spoke about dealing with depression and said he sometimes didn't want to wake up. Still, he refused help and relied on substances to cope. In August 2017, Pete came out as bisexual and became more outspoken online. Around this time, he dated actress Bella Thorne and later influencer Arzelia Rodriguez. Despite his rising fame, many fans noticed that his music still carried heavy sadness. That year, he released his first full album, Come Over When You're Sober, PT1. Songs like The Bright Side and Awful Things had clearer production, but the lyrics remained dark. In The Bright Side, he sang about his inner turmoil, expressing a longing for escape. On the day of his death, Pete posted videos on Instagram showing himself using various substances, including a cannabis concentrate and what he said were 6 alprazolam pills. He took a nap around 5:45 p.m. His manager checked on him twice, each time seeing he was still breathing. But by the third check, Pete was unresponsive. CPR was attempted and paramedics arrived, but it was too late. On December 8, 2017, the medical examiner ruled his passing an accident. The report mentioned fentanyl and alprazolam in his system, along with traces of THC, tramadol, and other substances. There was no alcohol. In 2019, Pete's mother, Liza Womack, filed a lawsuit against his management, claiming they encouraged substance use and ignored his mental health. The case dragged on for 4 years and was finally settled in 2023. His family now controls his music. After his passing, Pete's brother Oscar said being a rapper was like playing a character. Pete was proud that his music helped others, even if he himself felt lost. His lyrics, raw, direct, and emotional, now sound more like a journal than entertainment. He never pretended to be someone else. And maybe through all his music, he was trying to say goodbye in the only way he knew how. It was June 18, 2018 in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Jose Dwayne Onfroy, better known as X-Temptation, had spent part of the day browsing motorcycles at Reba Motorsports, not far from Fort Lauderdale. At just 20 years old, he was one of the most streamed artists in the world. But at around 3:57 p.m., everything changed. As he was leaving the dealership, two men suddenly approached his car. Seconds later, Jose was gone. Months before this, Jose posted a video on Instagram that fans later found unsettling. In it, he spoke directly to the camera. He said that if anything ever happened to him, he hoped his life had at least helped 5 million kids, or given them answers or peace. He added that he would be at peace, knowing his message reached people who were struggling. In the video, he urged others not to be defined by their struggles. He told viewers not to let depression shake them, not to let the body define the soul, and reminded them they were worth more than they could believe. These unscripted personal words took on a deeper meaning after his death. Jose's rise to fame began in 2016, when his song Look at Me exploded on SoundCloud. His music was emotional and raw, and fans connected with how open he was about personal struggles. But his story was also filled with controversy. At 16, Jose was sent to a youth detention center after being found with a weapon. In 2016, he was arrested again for robbery and assault. Later that same year, he was accused of harming his then-pregnant girlfriend. Jose pleaded not guilty and, at the time of his passing, was still waiting for trial on several charges. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some believed he was trying to change and focus on the good in his music. Others could not look past the serious accusations. In a 2016 interview on the No Jumper podcast, Jose described an altercation with a cellmate during his time in juvenile detention. The story was violent and shocked many listeners. Yet he also spoke about growth. He released a music video in late 2017 that showed a white child being hanged, a disturbing scene meant to send a message about racial injustice. The video received backlash, but it showed how Jose tried to use art to talk about serious topics. His songs reflected deep sadness, anger, and loneliness. Many fans felt he truly understood them. In 2017, Jose posted online that if he ever passed away, he wanted music from fellow rapper Fredo Santana played at his funeral. Fredo had died at 27 from health issues. Jose admired him and seemed to reflect often on life and death. In early 2018, Jose's house arrest was lifted by a Miami-Dade court so he could tour and make money. Around this time, he spoke online about wanting to donate $100,000 to programs supporting people in difficult situations. While this donation was never confirmed, it showed the direction he wanted to go. On the morning of June 18th, he posted about planning a charity event. Hours later, he visited Reba Motorsports. According to witnesses, two men in hoodies arrived in a black Dodge Journey. As Jose got into his BMW, they approached. One of them was armed. He reached into the car and fired several times. Jose was hit and lost consciousness. The suspects grabbed a Louis Vuitton bag from the car and drove off. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but he could not be saved. He was pronounced dead later that day. The Broward County Sheriff's Office opened an investigation and confirmed Jose's passing. They offered a $3,000 reward for any information that could lead to arrests. Fans across the world shared tributes. That Instagram video where Jose spoke about life and death was reposted everywhere. His words now sounded like a goodbye. Kanye West, Diplo, Travis Barker, and many others shared their thoughts. Jose had a strong influence on younger fans. Still, debates over his past continued. Some honored his art, others remembered the ongoing legal case. Jose's story was complex. He was young, conflicted, and emotional. But to many, his voice mattered. His final message lives on. Your mind is limitless. You are worth more than you can believe. It was December 8, 1980 in New York City. John Lennon, the former Beatle, had spent the day at the studio with his wife, Yoko Ono. The two returned home that night to the Dakota, their apartment building on the Upper West Side. Lennon had just turned 40 and was looking forward to a quieter life focused on his family and music. But those plans were never realized. Outside the Dakota, a man named Mark David Chapman waited. Just hours earlier, Chapman had approached Lennon for an autograph. Lennon signed a copy of his Double Fantasy album without hesitation. But when Lennon returned later that night around 10:50 p.m., Chapman stepped out again, this time with a weapon. He fired 5 shots. 4 hit Lennon. He collapsed at the entrance while Yoko Ono screamed. Lennon was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, but by 11:15 p.m., he was pronounced dead. The world was stunned. But strangely, Lennon had seen something like this coming. Back in 1965, during an interview about the Beatles' future, Lennon predicted they would either die in a plane crash or be targeted by someone unstable. That comment wasn't made in passing. Lennon had long feared something would happen to him. His first wife, Cynthia Lennon, said he lived with constant fear, believing someone might target him. In 1966, a psychic even sent him a letter warning he could be harmed in the United States. This stuck with Lennon for years. Later in the 1960s, while experimenting with LSD, Lennon had what he believed was a spiritual experience. According to Tony Bramwell, a close friend, Lennon once gathered the other Beatles at Apple Records and told them, "I am Jesus Christ, I have come back again." The others didn't panic. Ringo simply said, "Right, let's go have lunch." At a restaurant, Lennon told a fan he believed he was Jesus Christ. The fan, though surprised, responded with admiration for his recent music. These unusual moments hinted at deeper concerns. Lennon frequently expressed to those close to him that he didn't expect to live a long life. He believed someone would eventually come after him, and estimated he had only a few years left. 4 years later, his prediction proved true. Jack Douglas, who worked with Lennon in the studio, recalled that Lennon often made unsettling comments about his own death, suggesting it would happen soon and would be highly publicized. Despite Douglas's concern, Lennon continued to speak that way. He also became obsessed with recording everything, having journals and microphones documenting every moment, as if he knew time was running out. Just weeks before his death, he spoke to his half-sister, Julia Baird. He talked about a family reunion back in Rock Ferry, Merseyside, saying they'd all meet at Ardmore, a family house. He never made it. On the day he died, Lennon was in a good mood, finishing work on Yoko's song, Walking on Thin Ice. He left the studio, telling Douglas he'd see him in the morning. But that night, Chapman waited outside the Dakota. When Lennon passed, Chapman fired. An employee at the Dakota, Jay Hastings, recalled seeing Lennon collapse with blood coming from his mouth. Doctors at Roosevelt Hospital worked on him for 20 minutes, but his injuries were too severe. Chapman didn't flee. He stayed at the scene reading The Catcher in the Rye. He later said he wanted to be somebody and had planned the act for months. He was angry over Lennon's past statements and his fame. Chapman is still in prison today. 2 days after Lennon's death, Douglas arranged a small private memorial. Lennon was cremated, and although the location of his ashes was never confirmed, many believe Yoko Ono scattered them in Central Park, where the Strawberry Fields Memorial now stands. Lennon once said, "Living on borrowed time without a thought for tomorrow." That lyric, released after his death, feels like a quiet message from a man who had spent years preparing for the end he feared most. He was right.
He's still alive. And like Tony Dad, he didn't even bother to flee the scene.
Luxury cars are made to impress with speed, style, and power. But behind the shine, some of these machines became the scene of real horror. In this video, we'll look at 5 more disturbing deaths involving luxury cars. These aren't just high-speed crashes. They're real stories of how wealth, recklessness, or one small mistake turned a symbol of success into a deadly trap.
1999. It's one of those audio cars. From October 24, 1911 to 2015, 1999.
It was June 14, 2023, in Castel Palocco, a quiet neighborhood just outside Rome, Italy. 29-year-old Elena Uccello had just picked up her 2 kids, 5-year-old Manuel and his 4-year-old sister, from kindergarten. They were on their way home in her small, smart 4x4 car. Everything was normal. The kids were laughing in the backseat, but just minutes later, everything changed. Around 4 p.m., Elena was driving along Via di Macchia Saponara, a narrow road with a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour. Suddenly, a blue Lamborghini Urus came speeding toward her. Witnesses said it was driving dangerously, possibly trying to overtake another vehicle. Moments later, it slammed head-on into Elena's car. Inside the Lamborghini were 5 young men aged 20 to 23, all members of a YouTube group called The Borderline. The channel had over 600,000 followers and was known for doing risky challenges. That day, they were filming a 50-hour stunt, staying inside the rented SUV, filming content non-stop to gain views and money. The driver was 20-year-old Matteo Di Pietro, a founding member of the group. Sitting next to him was Vito Loiacono, another creator. Just 2 hours before the crash, Vito posted a TikTok video mocking a woman driving a smart car, laughing at how cheap it looked. He joked, saying his car was worth as much as Amazon. That smart car model was the same one Matteo would hit just hours later, with little Manuel inside. Locals described hearing a loud crash. One man ran over and began giving CPR to Manuel. Another witness, 18-year-old Valeria, saw one of the YouTubers climb out of the wreckage, look into Elena's car, but get no response. She said she couldn't get closer, it was too disturbing. Some people said the group kept filming even after the crash. Authorities investigated that claim. Emergency crews arrived fast. Elena, Manuel, and the little girl were rushed to Grassy Hospital in rescue. Doctors tried to save Manuel, but he was later pronounced dead. Elena had serious injuries and stayed in the hospital. Her daughter was also hurt, but later released into the care of her grandparents. As the news news spread, people were shocked and angry. It was soon revealed that the borderline had made nearly 200,000 euros the year before from challenge videos. Stunts that included living inside cars, eating large amounts of food, and taking risks for views. But this time, the consequences were real. Authorities launched a full investigation. Mateo was formally placed under investigation for causing a fatal crash and serious injury. His phone and the phones of the others were taken by police to check for any footage recorded before or after the crash. They also searched Mateo's home and the group's business office. Witnesses said the Lamborghini not only hit the smart car, it dragged it and crushed it. Debris was scattered everywhere. Early reports wrongly said Vito was driving, but it was later confirmed that Mateo had been behind the wheel. Vito posted on Instagram, saying he was deeply affected and had never driven the car. Mateo also tested positive for cannabis, which raised more questions. His lawyer, who is also his uncle, said the Lamborghini was going between 60 and 80 kilometers per hour, even though the speed limit was only 30. He also denied any reckless behavior. Italy's Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, reacted strongly. He said people who risk lives for online stunts shouldn't be allowed to drive again. Other officials demanded that the borderline's content be taken down immediately. A new law is now being considered, one that would ban promoting illegal behavior online. If passed, it could lead to prison time. The group Moj also asked for the Borderline's channel to be shut down. Their director said families had been destroyed in minutes, one mourning a tragic loss, the other facing the serious results of their actions. Eventually, the Borderline posted one final video titled 14th of June 2023. In it, they said they would end all activities and offered condolences to Manuel's family. Right now, the investigation is still ongoing. Police are reviewing messages, chat logs, and any videos that were taken during the crash. Still ongoing. Condolences to Manuel's family. Right now, the investigation is still ongoing. Police are reviewing messages, chat logs, and any videos that were taken during the crash. It's unclear how this will all end legally, but for one family, their world changed forever. It was December 2024, on National Highway 48 near Nelamangala, just outside Bengaluru. The highway was packed with traffic, trucks, cars, and commercial vehicles moving steadily through the morning. Inside a brand new Volvo XC90 SUV was 48-year-old Chandram Yegapatho, managing director of IAS Software Solutions. With him were his wife Garbai, 42, their children Gyan, 16, and Deeksha, 12, his sister-in-law Vijayalakshmi, 36, and her 6-year-old daughter, Arya. The family was traveling to their hometown of Morbagi in Maharashtra to spend Christmas with relatives. Chandra was driving carefully, keeping a safe distance behind a small truck, an Eicher Canter. The SUV, purchased just 2 months earlier, was known for its safety features. Everything seemed fine until the clock hit 11 a.m. At that moment, a large container truck carrying aluminum pillars was coming from the opposite direction. The driver, Arif, was reportedly driving fast. Witnesses and police reports later confirmed that Arif swerved suddenly to avoid hitting a car that had slowed down in front of him. In doing so, the container truck crossed the median, crashed into the Eicher Canter, and tipped over, its heavy load falling directly onto the Volvo SUV behind it. The outcome was immediate and devastating. The SUV was crushed under the weight of the container. All 6 passengers inside died instantly. Their bodies were badly damaged and the vehicle was nearly flattened. The drivers of the Eicher truck and the container lorry both had minor injuries and were taken to the hospital. Police and rescue teams arrived quickly, but traffic came to a standstill. Videos and photos from the scene showed the massive container blocking both lanes, with only parts of the Volvo visible underneath. Cranes had to be brought in to lift the container before emergency workers could reach the SUV. CCTV footage from a nearby building clearly showed how the crash happened. Police confirmed Chandram had been driving responsibly. The crash was caused by the sudden movement of the container truck, not by any mistake from Chandram. Chandram had built his life from humble beginnings in Morbagi, Jat Taluka. He studied at a government school, earned a diploma in electrical and electronics engineering from GPT Gopal, and graduated from NIT Surat, one of India's top engineering colleges. He worked at several multinational firms before starting his own tech company in Bengaluru. His company grew to employ over 100 engineers and was planning to expand into Pune. To his hometown, Chandram was more than just successful. He was a role model. Over 70 young people from Morbagi pursued engineering careers because of him. He helped many with school fees and job placements. During the COVID-19 lockdowns, he ran his business from Morbagi and supported his community. He even helped build a home for his married sister and supported his brother's medical education. With him on that